So welcome to chapter 8. We're going to be talking about chemical reactions. In this video, we're going to be talking about evidence of chemical change. And before we talk about chemical reactions, we need to go back and review something we talked about in chapter 5, I believe, on Dalton's atomic theory. And that is that the number and types of atoms that make up molecules are the same before and after the reaction. And so we will say that the reaction is balanced. All right, so again, the number and types of atoms that make up the molecules are the same before and after the reaction. But the number and type of molecules can change. And that's the example given here. So we have the same types of atoms on both sides, the same number of atoms on both sides, but the types of molecules changed. So if you have at the molecular level, your compounds are being broken down and forming new compounds, that indicates a chemical reaction. And so if we are in the laboratory and we want to look up evidence of a chemical change, there's 5 different things that we could look to. I'd say generally, you could look to a color change, formation of a solid, formation of a gas, the release of energy, the emission of light energy. And these are things that you've seen in your lab already on chemical and physical changes, where you looked at some of these examples and determined if it was a chemical or a physical change. So here's just showing some of those examples. So this would be an example of a color change where you're mixing 2 chemicals together, and as they react, you have a color change as time goes on. And so that's an example of a color change. That's something that's fairly common with chemical reactions. You can also have the formation of a solid. Again, you mix 2 chemicals together and you form a solid. Formation of a gas, emission of light, the evolution of heat, where you have heat given off in this reaction. All of these are examples of chemical reactions, or evidence, I should say, of chemical reactions that we can use to determine what's going on in the laboratory. And this is something that, again, you've already done in an experiment. Focusing in on the evolution of heat here, we need to be cautious when we're looking at heat as evidence for chemical reaction, because physical changes can also be accompanied by heat transfer, okay? So again, we need to be careful and read very carefully when we want to determine if heat or the evolution of heat or heat transfer is evidence of a chemical or a physical change. And one of the things we've talked about in that example is we have to think about what's going on at the molecular level. Are the molecules themselves, the structure of the molecules, changing? If it is changing the structure, then it's a chemical change. If the structure of the molecules isn't changing, then it's just a physical change. So some examples are given here, like dissolving one chemical into another, like dissolving sugar into water. You can get back the sugar molecules intact if you just evaporated all the water out. Or a phase change between a solid, liquid, and gas, like an ice cube melting. So there's some heat transfer involved there, but the water molecules at the molecular level have not changed. So that's just something to be cautious about, and we'll see that as you go through this section, this chapter. Okay, so that's it for the first video. This chapter, like I said in the beginning, is very much review of things we've already talked about. And in the next video, we're going to be talking about the evolution of a chemical equation. So I'll see you there.